We are currently 8 weeks away from BC Bike Race.
And a lot of you wanted to know how we're training.
We are going to take you guys through an endurance workout. Hello and welcome back to the channel. If you are a returning subscriber, thanks for being here. You are obviously being more awesome. If you are new here,
I'm Sid.
And I am Mackie, and today we are going to take you guys through an endurance workout.
A few weeks ago, we put up a post on Patreon and Instagram asking you guys for your feedback in the kind of videos that would be helpful to get you out there racing. And a lot of you wanted to know how we're training for BC Bike Race. So we decided we would do a series of videos where we go through the different components of training for a 7-day stage race and, what that takes.
We are currently 8 weeks away from BC Bike Race, so it's beginning to feel very close.
So we wanted to talk about endurance miles first because those are like the base of your training. Base training, base miles, those are phrases that get thrown out a lot. Basically what people are talking about are those longer, low to moderate intensity rides that form the base of your training. And without this kind of base training, you really set yourself up for injury or burnout or getting sick.
All of which are bad things.
I think maybe we should try to define what endurance is, because I think it's this word that gets thrown out a lot, and at the core of it, it's really just the ability to maintain an effort for a sustained period of time. And that can look really different depending on your goals. I think training endurance for all mountain bikers is good. That doesn't mean you need to be training the kind of endurance that you need for a 7-day XC stage race, which is what that's what BC is. That's really different for us because we actually have really good endurance for enduro riders. It requires endurance in the sense that you might be out there for 7 hours a day. And we can both do that.
We can be out all day and then ramp ourselves back up to race down a stage. So we've practiced that a lot over the last however many 5 years of racing enduro. BC is different in that you have to be able to go hard for 2, 3, 4 hours, but you're going hard the whole time. You're not going easy on the climbs and hard on the descents. You're going hard the whole...
to eat a burrito in the middle of the ride.
So you're going hard that whole time, and then you get to recover until the next day. But you then have to do that for 7 days in a row. So it's a different kind of endurance than we have been working on recently.
So the kind of endurance that you might want to train might look a lot different than what we're doing. Our priority over the past 6 months has been to be able to do a slightly higher intensity with less stopping. Possibly for even a shorter period of time, which I realize is a little counterintuitive, but we're pretty accustomed to big rides where there's a lot of stopping and a lot of fussing around, but you might be out for 7 hours. That's not good training for BC. So this winter, our endurance miles looked a lot like 2 to 3.5 hour road rides. So we would go out, we'd stop only if we had an issue or some reason we needed to stop. It would basically try to log those consistent miles.
At this point, we are ramping down the number of endurance rides we do each week and beginning to ramp up the strength work and the intensity work. And those will be some of the ones that we talk about in the later parts of this series, because that's stuff that you do later. This base endurance mileage is the base.
We'll pull up on the screen here a sort of a sample of a week of training from January or December, because even though it's May now and we're taking you guys through a ride today, we want you to have this perspective of this training didn't start now. If anything, we're at the end of our endurance phase. As you can see, this is a sample of our training from December of this year, we use an app called Training Peaks. So when we log into Training Peaks, we see all of these boxes that our coach Mike has put in there of what we should be doing for the week. So you can see here that this week, this was early December, we did basically 3 aerobic rides. The reason some of these are green and some of them are yellow is we actually went longer than we were supposed to. So Training Peaks gives you a little color grade there. And we did do one workout that had some intensity in it. As Mackie said, we'll get to intensity in a later one. But as you can see, we're doing a little bit there, but the vast majority of that training is endurance miles. The other thing that you can see here is that we did 2 strength workouts, and we did these on days that we were also doing aerobic or endurance miles. What we're training for is to be able to sustain that pace when we're tired. So we would do a strength workout in the morning and then endurance miles in the afternoon. And endurance miles are a good thing to do when you're tired. We're pretty tired today, for example, because you don't really have to perform at a high level. You just have to endure.
Okay, we will admit endurance miles are not the most flashy, exciting thing to talk about. It would be a lot more entertaining if we were doing FTP tests like everybody else is doing. But the truth is, an FTP test, all it does is tell you what level your endurance miles should be at. So we know what our FTP is. We've done those tests. What we need is our base miles so that we have something to build on. For breakfast this morning, we just did our usual. We had some eggs and potatoes. As you guys know, we are not super picky. We don't have any dietary restrictions. We're pretty happy to eat any kind of food.
It's another aspect of being an athlete is trying to be adaptable and like being able to run on pretty much any fuel. Like a lot of athletes are really wrapped up in what they eat. I think that's not healthy from a mental perspective or even from a racing perspective. Like we honestly make an effort to be able to race on pretty much anything because then that's like one less thing that we have to worry about.
We didn't worry a whole lot about like, oh, we have to make sure that it's 3 hours before we ride. Like some people really have a hard time if they have food in their stomach when they're going to ride. 2 things. One, we know that that isn't really a problem for us. Both of us tend to deal okay with riding when we have food in our stomachs. But secondly, because this was an endurance ride, we knew we weren't going to be doing like super hard intervals. So just normal breakfast. It was like an hour and a half ago at this point. So plenty of time to digest. Because it was an hour and a half ago, we're going to bring some snacks. And endurance rides are a really useful time to practice some of the things that you're going to do when you race.
As we're doing more XC racing, obviously the harder you're going, the harder it is to eat. So we've been practicing eating, which is obviously great. So when we do a ride like this, we basically bring the stuff that we'll be eating in a race. And we're working with Scratch Labs this year, so that'll be Scratch Chews and Scratch Bars. We also are using their hydration mix. Today's ride is going to be about 2 hours. We're currently in town in Moab, park, so we're gonna leave from the park and ride up to the Slick Rock Loop. So that's a pretty like decent 600 feet climb or something just to get there, and then we'll do an out and back on that trail. An out and back rather than doing the whole loop because the whole loop would definitely put us more in the 3 hour range. And we basically just trust our coach a lot when it comes to like how long we should be riding. If he puts this ride in as only 2 hours instead of 3 hours, then there's probably a reason for that, and that has...
Yeah, who are we to question what Mike says ride-wise?
Exactly. We do try to not overachieve too much, because usually if a ride is supposed to be 2 hours, that means that our training load is high enough that we don't need to do a 3-hour ride, and it could possibly be detrimental.
So Mike's instructions for this ride was steady, but not hard, ride together. And one thing to note on the ride together is sometimes when we do these rides, if there's a loop like there is at Slick Rock, we'll run them the opposite direction. So we both can kind of go like our own intensity, and then when we meet, then I'll turn around and follow Sid back the way that I came. And that allows me to go a little bit harder when I'm on my own. But this one, Mike says ride together, which means that it's not gonna be quite as high an intensity ride for me, but still within that endurance range. Is
that what it was? You've heard us say that we use power meters for training. We also use heart rate monitors, and the reason for that is that the two together give you additional information that can be really useful. So just heart rate alone is very suggestible. Or suggestible is not the right word. It can be very variable depending on how you're feeling, how tired you are, etc. Power is completely objective. It tells you exactly how much force you are putting out at any given time. And that is a more objective way to measure, you know, what the work you're doing. By combining the two, you get a neat combo of being able to tell objectively how hard you're working, but then also compare that to your heart rate to get an idea of whether or not you are properly recovered or, you know, tired and need more rest. For example, if your heart rate's really high, given how much power you're putting out, that's generally a sign that like something's a little bit weird. Same thing if your heart rate's really low, like you're like, I'm working really hard, but I can't get my heart rate to go up. Another sign that something weird is going on. So the two together can be really, really powerful for training and racing.
This ride, I'll probably be in the like 100 to 130 beats per minute for heart rate, which is solidly like in that endurance range. For Sid, it'll be more like 130 to 150. She just naturally runs a slightly higher heart rate than me, and riding together, she'll be going slightly harder intensity-wise than I will be.
Our power numbers will obviously vary a lot because this is mountain biking, so you'll be putting up high power going up the hill, low power down. I would say my power by the end of the ride will probably be on average around 150 or 160. So this is way below FTP, but that also includes the descents and the flat bits where you're not pedaling that hard. One of the goals with endurance rides is to not stop. So we've pretty much been going consistently. We had to stop because there was a crowd of dudes on hit bikes, which was pretty funny. But other than that, we haven't stopped. Probably just be pretty consistent for 2 hours.
We decided to do this ride on our hardtails because A, we just haven't spent as much time on our hardtails and we really like them, and B, we are planning to do a couple of cross-country races here, and you guys will be seeing those in some upcoming videos, and we'll probably be racing those on our hardtails, and so spending a little bit more time on those bikes, getting used to them, working on our climbing like we did in last week's sessioning video, all of those are really important. And so, you know, whatever bike you're gonna race, you wanna make sure you spend enough time on it that you feel comfortable on that bike and you're not like figuring things out or feeling like your setup's off. So that's another great way to use endurance rides, is to get used to a different bike, dial in your setup, make sure everything is ready to go before you're gonna go race it. endurance rides are the time that you want to dial in your race nutrition. So for some people, different bars, different chews don't sit well with them, give them stomach cramps, or, just don't make them feel good. So you should definitely experiment during your endurance rides, not during a race. It is a bad idea to try something new during a race.
Maggie's giving me a look because at Sea Otter, I was like kind of nervous about the XC race because my legs were super tired from the expo, and I was like, I'm gonna cramp, this is gonna be awful. And like right before the race, this lady came up to me and gave me these like sport leg things and like gave me this little lecture about like how good they are for like not cramping and stuff, and they're just like mystery like pills, and I totally took them during the race. Mackie was like, you did what?
Do not do that, friends.
It was fine.
It happened to work out fine for Sid, but you know what? If she had then like had terrible stomach issues, she would have been so embarrassed. So don't be like Sid in this situation.
Don't take the mystery pill.
Don't take the mystery pill. Figure out how often you need to eat, because like different people need different amounts of food. In general, what we would recommend is at about 45 minutes or an hour, you want some calories. So if your drink mix, like Scratch, is pretty much just hydration, you're gonna wanna eat some chews, you're gonna wanna eat part of a bar, something like that. Really for a race that's fairly short, like hour and a half and under, you probably aren't gonna need a whole lot of solid food. Like a couple of chews will probably take care of you.
Especially if you go into the race well-fueled and well-hydrated.
Exactly.
A lot of people will tell you that they have to eat like every 20 minutes, and a lot of that I think is kind of like in your head, because the reality is like you have enough fuel and hydration for like an hour-long race.
But probably not a 3-hour-long race.
Yeah,
so
the longer it gets,
then that's where so this ride is going to be a 2-hour ride. So we know that like we're going to need some food, but we probably we aren't going to need a sandwich or like entire bar each. Like we're gonna eat some chews, we're gonna eat part of a bar, and that should be plenty for 2 hours, because we know afterwards we're gonna drink a recovery drink and we're gonna eat lunch. So dial that in for yourself, because you really, really don't want to be experimenting come race day.
All right, we are done with our ride, but stop, pause, do not leave. If you're serious about getting faster on your bike, it is what we are about to do, and what you need to do at the end of a ride that is probably equally as important as actually logging those miles. The way you get stronger and fitter is not just by working out and basically running your muscles down, it's by building them back up, which is what you do when you recover. So the first thing we do after a workout is we do a recovery drink, or if we're about to eat a meal, sometimes we don't need to do a recovery drink, but the most important thing is that you replenish those glycogen stores and get an adequate amount of protein and carbohydrates into your system so that your body can start repairing your muscles. We also do some recovery breathing exercises, which basically allows our body to like know that we're done working out and it can start recovering. And if you have time to stretch, take a nap, anything you can do to let your muscles recover from the effort you put forth in the workout will really increase the benefits that you get from that workout.